Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am Abe with MysticGenmara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And tonight I would like to offer a book review for a couple of books, the primary one being Dharma Punx. But I had the privilege to actually get to see Noah Levine, I think it's Levine. Many years ago, he was at a conference, a spiritual conference, and the main theme of this conference was Buddhism and various teachers therein. There's a few other elements tossed in there, but Buddhism and Kabbalah actually turned out to be the two primary ones, and they were the ones that caught my attention, so of course I went to those. This particular gentleman, Noah Levine, wrote this book, and I actually picked it up at the event, and it was interesting to hear him talk because he started off as a very interesting young man. He went through a period of time. His dad is a practicing Buddhist. He's written a book or two. I can't remember exactly how many his dad's written, but he trained his son. But Noah went through a period of rebellion, and these are actually his hands on the cover. He is, when I saw him, Buddhist was not what I thought. Shaved head, tattoos everywhere, piercings, a little heavier than what I was expecting when I first started hearing about what he was. But what his life story is, which is Dharma Punx, that's this one, is just going through how he went through a rebellious period and he just didn't quite buy into the Buddhist philosophy. It was too passive, it was too blasé, and he went out and did a lot of things, can't say some of them on YouTube, that were not the greatest. And then his dad challenged him to do something because his dad believed in a specific type of Buddhist ritual, and I actually have his dad's book as well, but we won't go over that right now. And this ritual basically was fill your life with everything you want to do that you think you need to do in 1 year. Just one. At the end of that year, hit the reset button. So he goes through this whole thing of traveling around the East, monasteries and hostels, and this was his dad's challenge to clean up. Like, you are going down the wrong path. Do everything you need to do in the next year. Let's see what you can do. And so he went through this whole big thing, illnesses and getting kicked out of places, and he didn't have the greatest of experiences. We'll just go with that. But at the end of it, and he goes through this process, and it's a ritual within Buddhism. It changed his perspective on life. It changed how he viewed things, and that's what his philosophy has become, is this belief that Buddhism is actually not for the faint of heart. It's passive to a point. And listening to him, he spoke for like an hour and a half, and that was just a drop in the bucket. So of course I had to pick up the book, and I read this entire book. It's like 300 pages, 252 pages. I read it in an afternoon. I was so shocked by the things that he had went through that I went out and bought his Buddhist book because his life experience, and that's what Dharma Punx is about, is going through this process of how he came to a point in his life where he couldn't do it anymore. He had to take on a spiritual existence because he was going down a path to destruction, and how it changed his viewpoints. And he's very blunt, not vulgar, but blunt in this book. And that's, I think, the part that is so fascinating about it, is he tells about his issues. He talks about his addictions. He talks about the illnesses. But in the end, he explains how he came to a realization. He's doing what he's doing with these types of works to help people not make the mistakes that he did. Basically giving you the belief and the option that there's more out there than the drugs, the alcohol, random amorous encounters. There's more to life than just that. And he's not saying that all of that's bad, but when that becomes your focus, that becomes your idol. And it was just, I don't know, it was one of those things when you get done reading it, you're kind of like, oh, never thought about that before. It's a wake-up call. But then in Against the Stream, and he calls it, the one on Buddhism, a Buddhist manual for spiritual revolutionaries. And again, this is him, so he's got a lot of tattoos. But in the back, he talks about Buddha was a revolutionary. His practices were subversive. His message seditious, which it was for the time. His enlightened point of view went against the norms of his day. In his words, against the stream. And when you read Buddhist philosophy, they talk about how going with the flow, going against the stream, there's a lot of focus on water. Water is also an energy force, so there's a lot of that going on. And he talks about the basics of Buddhism. And he's even in here, very blunt. It says here he goes through personal anecdotes, exercises, guided meditations. He helps you understand how he processed through the things that he was dealing with. And because of what he had went through, he ended up getting a master's or PhD in psychology. I can't remember. Let's see if it says here. Master's degree in counseling and psychology. He has traveled the world because of what he's done. He works with inner city youth a lot, which is not probably the most comfortable thing in the world. But these books to me were a great introduction. If you think Buddhism is kind of boring, which that was always my philosophy on it, or my thoughts on it, and I'd researched a little bit into it, but it was just not quite there for me. Then I found his work, and like I said, this was 15, 16 years ago. And I think the first book, Dharma Punx, was in 2007, so that's how long ago that was. I saw him, I want to say it was like 2008, 10, 8 to 10, somewhere in there. But after hearing how he talks about Buddhism, he puts a face to it, he puts a realism to it that makes it less monks in orange robes in the middle of nowhere on a mountaintop in a monastery to, like, and he points to himself when he was up there, he's like, do I look like someone who would be a Buddhist? And you could just see every head in the room shake their head like, no. Because he didn't look like someone you'd assume. You know, Buddhist, very quiet, very neutral about things. He's like, yeah, no. But the philosophies, the practices, the exercises that he gives in Against the Stream in particular actually were super interesting. And I did, just because it's what I do, I did a lot of his exercises just to see, and of course I didn't mark any down because I'm special, just to see how they feel, what the response would be within your own mind, body, soul. And that's where you start getting into the basics of the history and fundamentals of Buddhism. Then he goes to boot camp, which is the fundamentals of the spiritual revolution. The field guide, which is engaging reality. I think that's where the exercises start. Let me check here, sorry. But it's definitely worth the read. It's worth looking through, especially if you are someone who's feeling lost, like no one understands. Oh, trust me, someone out there has been through the same thing, has went through a similar situation. You're not alone, basically. So, okay, so there's actually an appendix. That's where the exercises are, sorry. And it's meditative training. Starting with breathing exercises, you're bringing your body into it, so you're breathing with your body. Then you get into your mantras and your toning through vocals. And then you start focusing on the mind, how to discern truth. There's walking exercises, compassion meditations, loving kindness meditations, which are at times a little difficult, just especially if you're not feeling like you can love yourself. How are you supposed to do a meditation on it? But they actually do help you connect deeper to you. So there's that. There's the appreciation joy meditation. Oh, no, I didn't do that one. And I won't say its name. The forgiveness meditation, which is interesting. That's one where I started really understanding the forgiveness concept. I've had a few awakening experiences with the forgiveness concepts, and I don't feel like you're ever going to get it down pat. Like, you're never going to learn it all, but this is a good starting point to at least get you guided in the right direction. There's reflections on death meditation, and I will say right up front, if you're sensitive to death, maybe try some of the other ones first, because that one, it's not like it's bad, it's just it challenges how you think about things. Then he starts going through like the Rebel's Path, Revolutionary, and what is fascinating to me about these is he doesn't put a big spin on it. It's more of, this is what I have, this is what happened to me, this is what's worked for me. And like I said, his story in Dharma Punx is at times almost too raw. Like, you don't want to believe that this kind of stuff goes on, but it does. And then to see the transition, and you can see it in how he describes it really well. The chaos, the frustration, all of the addiction situations, and you can see this shifting through and he writes really well, honestly. But he shifts this transition into, this is where I was at, the chaos, and then he starts to bring in, and as I progressed, this is where the peace started to come in. This is where the balance started to come in. And it did change. The tone changed a lot. And not like his style of writing, but the tone of how he was working and how his life was running. You could see the shift. And then in Against the Stream, he actually talks about the exercises and how the philosophy helped him change those aspects of his life. So if that's something interesting, I did link the 2 books here. He's got 2 more. I haven't read them, so I can't speak to them. But he also has a website, againstthestream.com. I linked that down there, so you can go check it out. He's doing a couple of retreats in 2024. I was surprised to see that. And I was scrolling through his website, because I don't follow him in that respect. I'm just really like his books. He does some Zoom stuff, and there's some online things that he does even now. So it might be worth just checking out if you're into looking at a different way of examining Buddhism. We'll call that. But if you enjoyed this little clip here, drop a like on the video. If you're new, hit that subscribe button and comment if you've ever heard of Noah Levine, however you say his name. And if you've read either of these books or read the other 2, let me know in the comments below, because I'm just curious as to who else has read these, because I've talked to a few people who are in this type of community and they've never heard of him. So just kind of curious how many other people have. But he does have, like I said, he is involved in some retreats and stuff now, and it might be kind of fun if you're around to check one out. So I will talk to you guys later. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video.